All right, let's get into it. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're not just going to look at a news story, we're going to take it apart, piece by piece, to see how it was put together. We're going to see how one single event can get twisted and totally transformed as it moves through the media. Let's go. So, here's the central puzzle for us today. You've got one event, just one, but it gets told 5 completely different ways. And the weirdest part? It all happens so fast, in just a handful of hours. A really bizarre pattern starts to show up. It's basically a perfect case study of how information travels and, mutates in this day and age. All right, every story has to start somewhere, right? This one doesn't kick off with some huge explosion or anything. Nope. It all starts with a single, very simple report. This is our ground zero, our baseline, the one solid fact that everything else is built on. So, March 29th, the Israeli military puts out a report. They say they've detected missile launches coming from Iran. And that's it. That's the whole statement. Clear, factual, sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? Well, this single sentence is where our entire story begins. But from that one simple, clean report, things start to get weird. And they get weird fast. The entire story we're about to unpack completely transforms in just 35 hours. I mean, think about that for a second. That's less than 2 days for a narrative to completely flip on its head. And this is the craziest part. It happens without a single new fact being added to the mix. Okay, so this is where our investigation really kicks off. The first clue that something's not quite right here, it isn't in the facts of what happened. It's in the words people start using to talk about it. And you start to see this story pop up in some pretty interesting places. It appears on outlets like CGTN, that's Beijing's state broadcaster, and also on Iran International, which is an outlet that's actually in opposition to the government in Tehran. Now, keep those 2 names in your head because they're going to become really important in a minute. Okay, so check this out. We see this subtle but really powerful shift in the language. The first report, the factual one, used the word detected. But as the story starts to spread, that word kind of morphs. Detected becomes launched, which, feels way more active, more aggressive. Then launched escalates even further to intercepting. So with each word change, what our source calls the threat temperature just gets cranked up, notch by notch. And here's the absolute kicker, the most important part of this whole thing. During this entire linguistic escalation, not one single new fact was reported. Nothing. No updates from the ground, no new official statements. The event itself didn't change at all, but the story about the event was getting hotter and hotter by the minute. Okay, so we have an escalating story, but now the puzzle gets another layer. And honestly, this one might be even stranger, because it's not just about who is talking about this, it's about who is staying completely silent. The biggest, most established names in global news, just crickets. Complete silence. You've got a story brewing about a potential conflict between major regional powers, and the usual journalistic heavy hitters are just nowhere to be seen. So who exactly are we talking about? We're talking about the big 3 wire services, the Associated Press, Reuters, and Agence France-Presse. I mean, you have to think of these guys as the backbone of global news. They have people everywhere, and their entire job is to verify stories before they get blasted out to thousands of other news outlets around the world. And on this story that's getting more and more intense, nothing. They never touched it. And this, right here, gets to the absolute core of how weird this whole situation is. You've got state-controlled media, like the broadcaster from Beijing, and then you have outlets that are literally in opposition to the government in Tehran. These are groups that on any other day should be at each other's throats, but here, they're suddenly moving in perfect sync, like a choreographed dance, telling the exact same escalating story at pretty much the exact same time. Okay, so let's just step back and lay out all the pieces of this puzzle. We have a story that escalates with no new facts. It's totally ignored by the usual gatekeepers of global news. And it's being pushed in perfect harmony by this incredibly unlikely alliance of media outlets. This is the point where we have to stop and ask the big question: why? So, first question, why skip the wire services? I mean, what's the game plan there? Why would you want to avoid the very organizations whose entire reputation is built on independently checking the facts before a story goes worldwide? And question number 2, why ramp up the language? If nothing new has actually happened, what's the point of making the story sound more and more dramatic? You have to ask, who benefits from turning up the heat like that? And that brings us to the biggest question of them all, the real mystery. Why on earth would these media outlets, who are normally on completely opposite sides of, well, everything, suddenly start singing the exact same tune? It's the most unnatural part of this entire chain of events.
So, what's the answer here? Well, the source material doesn't really point to some huge, elaborate conspiracy. Instead, it gives us something that's actually way more valuable. It gives us a new lens to look at the news through, a new tool for our media literacy toolkit. And here's the crucial insight. The key to cracking this whole thing isn't about what's in the headlines, it's about what's missing. It's the missing independent verification, the missing reports from the usual sources. It's the missing context that would explain why these strange bedfellows are all suddenly on the same page.
And that leaves us with one last really powerful question to keep in our back pocket. The next time you see a story like this, one that pops up across a bunch of unlikely outlets all at once, just ask yourself this. Are they really talking to each other, or are they all just reading from the same page? It's a simple question, but it could completely change the way you see the news from now on.